Today's guest, Mel Dupres, is a homeopath and yoga instructor in Bermuda. She will be sharing some valuable information on how she was able to use not just homeopathy, but also yoga to process her own personal journey of grief. Early on in life, Mel realized that her calling is to help herself and others to be happy, healthy, and free. And as an adoptee, she has struggled with the feelings and consequences of loss, grief, and abandonment. Working diligently to overcome this for herself, she now assists others in their process and is humbled and honored to do so. She developed a passion for complementary medicine over 20 years ago after completing a human science degree at UCL. And then she went on to the London College of Classical Homeopathy and then spent time on postgrad work at the University of Westminster. She enjoys practicing homeopathy to this day and knows it's one of the most profound systems of medicine available. Leaving her Bermuda island home as a teen, she spent many years in the UK, which led her down a path of revelation and self-discovery through study, clinical practice, and work in homeopathic pharmacy. She spent years travelling to India to learn from Rajan Sankaran and the Gondia Homeopathic College and Hospital, to Ghana, where she ran homeopathic clinics, and other various countries around the world. In 2000, she began to practice yoga on and off, but it wasn't until her trip to India, where she practiced daily, that yoga really helped tremendously to unlock her own health issues due to stress at the time. And this experience sparked her interest to teach yoga, and she went on to complete the 200-hour yoga training in 2011 with Yoga London. Mel has found that yoga and homeopathy together really complement each other incredibly well, giving clients the opportunity to transcend illness and transform into a new state of being. Life is a journey. For Mel, it's one of fun, healing, and devotion, and by embracing this, there is a quest for deep connection and understanding of herself and others. Her message is one of hope, that healing is possible and that it is something that comes from within. Mel's website will be live soon, so keep an eye on the show notes as we'll update it as soon as it's ready. In the meantime, you can reach Mel at meldupres@yahoo.co.uk. That's MELDUPRES @yahoo.co.uk. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now my mum and your host, Eugenie Kruger.
Hello, homies, and a very warm welcome to Homeopathy Hangouts. Today, we get to hang with the lovely Mel Dupres, all the way from Bermuda. Now I'm going to have the Beach Boys song in my head. Welcome, Mel.
Hi, Eugenie. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's such a pleasure to have you on. Why is it so fun to say Bermuda? And it's just, there's something about it that just, the word itself, I don't know why. Maybe there's a homeopathic case in that. So, Mel, tell me a little bit and tell our listeners how you were first introduced to homeopathy.
Okay, so I have quite a fun story, actually. I was sent away at a young age, at 16, to do A-levels in the UK from Bermuda. So it was quite a shock to go over to the UK, where it was so different and so cold, of course, in comparison. And the intention was that I would study medicine, allopathic medicine. Well, as I got there and it cut from the umbilical cord, as it were, I realized that that wasn't what I wanted, because I started to get introduced to things like essential oils and vegetarian diets and acupuncture. I remember those were the first things. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I've never heard of these things before. And then eventually I got introduced to homeopathy. And I tell you, that captured my heart. I just fell in love instantly. So I made a compromise and I said, okay, well, I'll do a degree, a BSc degree in human science. So I went from Harrogate to London, and that's where I further fell in love with life. I really sort of came into myself living in London and at university. But in my third year, when I was doing my exams, my final exams, I don't know how I got my hands on it. I probably saw it in a bookstore, The Science of Homeopathy by George Vithorkis. Well, I totally just drenched myself in that book. And I did study for my exams and just about passed, but I was just on my path then to homeopathy. So when I finished university, I went to study at the London College of Classical Homeopathy. And yeah, I was just in my element. So going from a sort of average student, I was just top of the class. I just enjoyed every moment of learning about the organon, about remedies, everything. It's just amazing.
And it is amazing once you're in that flow and once you're going with what you should be doing, everything becomes so much easier, because I remember studying homeopathy as well and working and being pregnant and studying and everything else. And it was never an issue. It was so easy. It was never an issue because that was, just what you were meant to do.
Yeah. That's it.
And how was life different for you from Bermuda to London? I mean, that's probably a big jump, I'm guessing, and away from your family.
Yes, but I got used to it, and it was actually the best thing that I ever did. Mm-hmm. Definitely the best thing I ever did. And I wanted to say, actually, just while I was studying homeopathy, obviously I started to see a homeopath. So all the things that were going on in my life at home, which were, I'll say, traumatic. I mean, it's relative, right, what traumas are. But for me, I was in a very emotionally depressed state. Mm-hmm. So I started being prescribed homeopathic remedies, and I started to emerge from that state myself. So that's how I knew that homeopathy actually worked.
Mm-hmm. And you have a special place in your heart for helping people with grief using not just homeopathy, but yoga as well, right? So you're going to have to tell us a little bit about how that all intermingles, because we haven't had somebody on the show yet that combines these two. So how did you get into that, and how does that even work?
So just going back to my earlier years, I was adopted at 4 days old into a very loving family, I have to say. They loved me immensely. However, for me, there was something not right. There was an unspoken, unidentified feeling, which I didn't quite understand then. Even growing up and into my 20s, I didn't understand it. It was much later that I really came to terms with it all. But looking back, I realized that I was grieving. I had lost my birth mother and father, and since which I know that I had a sister that was older than me. So I must have known her on some level, even in the womb, because I was only 4 days old when I was given up. So I had lost that connection and almost forced to find other connection with people unknown to me. But as I said, they were very loving and embraced me. They adored me. So I was very fortunate in that regard. But the subject of adoption is huge, and it's not for this moment. But just the basics of it is that I was grieving. I realize that now for a very long time. So on my journey, I was unfortunately afflicted, if I can use that word, with eczema. So I suffered with eczema for a very long time. And it got worse after my father died. So my adoptive father passed away in 2005. And after that, my eczema just went berserk. So for 10 years, I tried to get a handle on this. And in the process, I got further into understanding myself using homeopathy, but other modalities as well, acupuncture, changed diet, all of those things to help support myself. And it wasn't, as I said, for 10 years. And then my adoptive mother passed away at that point, at which time my eczema started to subside. So for those of you that know anything about eczema, it's this expression or lack of expression of self from voice and coming out through the skin, as well as the connection with the lungs, connection with the intestines, and it was just this really revealing experience. So my eczema was actually my biggest teacher. And as much as I suffered, I realized that there was a lot of learning there, and I survived it. Mm. So through that, there was a point where I ended up in India, and I was at an Ayurvedic clinic there. And I was taught yoga one-on-one. There weren't many people around. I think it was the off season in Goa. And I was taught yoga every day I had this experience of yoga, and I realized how helpful it was for my nervous system, because at that point I wasn't sleeping properly. I was just just having a nervous breakdown, and I was a wreck. But the yoga helped me tremendously. So it was at that point, after I left and I went back to the UK, that I realized that's something I wanted to embrace, and I wanted to be able to share in my practice. So not only with homeopathy, but helping people with yoga as well. So that's what I've done. And I love it.
That's so amazing. Yeah, yoga is pretty amazing. I have to admit, I've been shocking. I just keep putting it off, but it's something I need to get back into. I used to be so good when I was pregnant with my kiddies, and I remember just how good it made me feel doing it. And is there anything else? I'm a newbie with yoga, so is there anything else that you could tell other newbies like me? Maybe some encouragement on how to get in it, or how it can help our bodies, and how you see that interplaying, and also how, in what way that helped you with the grief, because you're using it also specifically to help with the grief, right?
I am, yes. So let me just first say about trauma. I used that word at the beginning. So trauma really is about loss of something. Loss of connection, loss of power, loss of safety. It's loss.
Yeah.
Leaving us vulnerable, really. And the natural reaction, the natural emotional reaction to loss is grief. And then if we take it a step further, if we're not allowed to grieve, and often we aren't, society doesn't really allow for grieving. They sort of give pay lip service to it, but we don't really embrace the process of grieving. So if that's not allowed, then we can fall into anger. And generally, when anger isn't allowed, the body will contract. It will brace itself with tension. And we store that within our body, in our organs, in our systems. And that's where we can come into a diseased state. Where yoga comes in now is that it allows us, knowingly or unknowingly, to release that tension. And it's such a powerful thing. Even the embracing breathing, which is the first step of yoga. Yeah, we're conscious of our breath, aware of our breath. Changing our breath can change our mood. We probably know this. If you get some good news, your breathing becomes shallow and you become excitable. But if you get bad news, the breathing becomes, that's classic sigh of Ignition. Yeah, you sigh and become heavy. But being aware of this breathing can just help to regulate the body and regulate the mood and release the tension that we hold.
You've explained that so beautifully. And I don't know why I've never thought of trauma as being the loss of something, but you're so right. And as you were saying that, I was thinking of the trauma cases I've had in my clinic. And yes, every time, if you actually kind of just distill it down, it was because there has been a loss of some sort. And I'm just thinking, I deal with a lot of birth trauma in my clinic. And even that, it's like a loss of power. It's a loss also of that, that dream they had of how this was going to be such a beautiful birth. And then that dream is lost, or that, hope is lost. So that's such a great way to describe it. But yeah, you're really right. It does kind of boil down to that. And I love how you have described how the yoga can help your body physically with all that. But I guess, there's obviously more to yoga. There's, I guess, more of a spiritual side to yoga as well, which, some people embrace, and you don't necessarily, I guess, have to have that side for yoga to be beneficial. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm the newbie here.
No, that's true. You don't necessarily need to be tuned into it or know the theory of it. It happens. It happens regardless.
Yeah. That's kind of like homeopathy, whether you believe in it or not, or whether you want to go deep into it or not. It's got to work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And another fun fact is, is that I enjoy using homeopathy and yoga together. So literally together. So taking remedies. So if I'm on deep acting remedies, if I take them before my practice, wow, it can be such a transformative practice. And I don't know if I'm just hoping that that's true, but I don't think so because I feel it. It's my experience.
It doesn't really matter if it's true or not. If you're getting the benefit of that, then that's really all that matters, right? That's what I always feel.
Yeah.
It's the result that matters. So can you
I've used it in groups as well.
In groups? So you give the whole group a remedy?
Yeah. Usually a chakra remedy or something like that.
Okay, you're going to have to talk to us about that.
Well, more as an experiential, just a fun thing to do, because it's not like taking the case beforehand and then it's just like, here, would you like to try this for your crown chakra and see if you connect, what happens in that, and never really going into detail afterwards, but just for the students to see for themselves what happened. Yeah.
Oh, that's really fun. And are you using, we're actually doing something similar at the moment. We've got a group of mums who are using the butterfly remedies, and the first week of every month we try a different butterfly remedy, but we don't know what it is, and everyone's just writing down their experience. It's just like a very informal proving. But because homeopathy is so safe and it is so powerful, it's really incredible to experience these remedies. And also, some homeopaths will say, oh, you have to be careful what remedy you give because it can suppress, which I don't ever believe homeopathy does. But at the same time, Samuel Hahnemann proved 120 remedies on himself in his lifetime, and he lived to be 88. So he did something right. So I do think it is good, even if it's just for a little bit of fun. And I know some homeopaths are going to watch this and go, oh, or listen to this and go, you can't just use it for fun, but just to, in a way, it helps us to be more in tune with our bodies, because I've actually felt with us doing these butterfly remedies as a proving, it's forced me to be more in touch with my own body, because I'm like, okay, maybe I'm a little bit more hungry today. And then I'm like, well, is this because of the remedy or is it because of something else going on? Or actually noticing I'm a little bit happier. Oh, is it the remedy? Oh, why am I? What could possibly be going on that could be causing this? So it's actually consciously making you more in tune with your body and more aware, as opposed to just go, go, go and disregarding things. But I also want to ask
I agree with you, yeah.
Yeah, I want to ask you, Mel, with the, you said the crown chakra remedy, are you using the Narayani remedies, or do you have some other remedies that you use for that?
Well, I actually have a remedy machine.
Okay, cool.
So in the guide there, the chakra.
Oh, wonderful.
Codes. Yeah.
Because we've had
I do use it, Narayani.
Oh, you do? Oh, I love those remedies. They're so amazing. And there's like a spiritual awakening remedy. That would be a good one to use with the yoga. And there's, a few of those, chakra remedies and gemstone remedies. And I actually wonder, have you tried the butterfly remedies with your yoga sessions yet? That would be a great one to try with your yoga, I reckon.
I haven't, but I have tried a butterfly remedy with one of my clients, and the transformation in this woman was just phenomenal. She truly spread her wings and flew.
Oh, yeah. I'm on a bit of a tangent with the butterflies at the moment, so I just have to rein myself back in, and we'll just get back into this. So for yourself, what sort of remedies, like would you use a constitutional remedy before you use your yoga, or what? And do you do it every time or just sometimes? Like, talk to us a little bit about that process, because I know some people are going to be listening to this and going, oh, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, not every time, but I have done in the past, not so much recently. But yeah, if I still see a homeopath or contact one on Zoom.
Good, yeah.
Days, because actually I am the only homeopath in Bermuda.
That was my next question. Is homeopathy well perceived? Do people even know what it is?
Oh, they do so. Yeah, more so now. Yeah.
Thanks
when
to
I
you.
first came back, a few years, 2003, hardly anyone knew what homeopathy was. And it was a real struggle to have a practice. I worked in other jobs, so I'm having a practice, but now it's different. I mean, now more people know, and they're seeking my service and understand. Even if they don't understand homeopathy, they understand or know that they're seeking something other than allopathic medicine, or in conjunction with allopathic medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could maybe have a chat with our listeners about as well, anything else you can say about grief or trauma or homeopathy, or maybe how a homeopath can help somebody coming to seek help for grief and trauma. Like what would that process look like? What sort of things would you discuss? Maybe a couple of your favorite remedies that you might use, and how you incorporate the yoga into that, just in a case setting. So if people want to book with you, that they know what sort of thing they can expect.
So I'll just say, first of all, that, if we think of loss, and the opposite of loss is gain.
Mm.
And how I like to think of it is that when we heal, or we're open to the possibility of healing, then we gain. We can gain our power back. We can gain connection with ourselves and with others, and we can feel safe again. So if I give you a couple of examples, perhaps, of two women that have come to me recently who have lost their husbands, and they're mature women, in 70s and 80s. And they reached out to me. And one in particular, I'll start with this one. She was in a terrible state. She, and I knew her previously and had treated her, but I hadn't seen her for a while. And when she contacted me, she was pretty much disoriented. Like she was overcome with grief, basically. And we had a consultation, and we talked about where she was and how it felt, what was going on with her physically. And I gave her Natmure, high potency of Natmure. And we did quite quickly, after a couple of days later, we did some yoga. And she was already doing yoga in her life, so she knew what to expect. And then I saw her that same week, a few days after that. And I've been seeing her twice a week since then, so for a few months. But honestly, Eugenie, within the first 3 weeks, the progress that she had made was incredible. She was back to herself, feeling empowered, taking things in their stride, sorting out the things that had to be sorted out when someone dies, when your spouse dies and you have to do things of the house and wills and whatever.
Yeah.
The paperwork, which was so overwhelming. And then, eventually she just put one foot in front of the other and got it done. And she's just in such an amazing place now. Mm-hmm. And there are moments where she gets down, but nothing compared to that first instance when I saw her.
That's amazing. Yeah. And do you then actually do like a one-on-one yoga session with people?
Yeah.
Oh, that is really cool. Wow. Is that something you can do over Zoom, or do you just do it in person?
Could do over Zoom. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I've just been doing it one-to-one in person here.
Oh, that's always going to be better anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do like that touch. So I can put hands on and feel. And also guide people, if they're having tension in their shoulders. The other lady that I mentioned, she has a lot of shoulder issues. And I often put my hands on her shoulders and just say, breathe into my hands. And she's like, the heat radiating from your hands. You've got such healing hands, she said.
That is beautiful.
And I gave her Ignatia, and I gave her some Natmure. And again, she also is finding her way. Her situation is more recent.
That's amazing, Mel. And I wonder if you can maybe tell our listeners about homeopathy and whether it suppresses the grief, because I'm sure some people would be listening to this and thinking, well, how is homeopathy helping? Is it just actually suppressing the grief, and that's how the person is able to carry on? Or how would you describe the process of what homeopathy does so that the person is able to carry on with their life?
Sure. I think with grief, there is some talking that needs to happen, and an understanding of what's going on. Where the homeopathy comes in, it allows for any changes that need to take place and the process to happen. It supports that. I don't think there's suppression in it. But there is some sort of a process and understanding that needs to happen, not just, here, take this pill and you'll be fine.
And for yourself, how would you describe how homeopathy has made you feel in regards to grief? I'll just give you a quick little example. Like when my dad passed away, when I took the Ignatia, it just made me feel like things were going to be okay. I can't describe it in any other way, but I was like, things are going to be okay. Like there was no suppression of the sadness. Like it's still there, but you just somehow know that it's going to be all right. So it's kind of like a light at the end of the tunnel. You can feel yourself carrying on. So I guess I'm trying to make people understand that it's not, the homeopathy is not taking away the grief or making you not miss the person. You will still miss them, but in a productive way as opposed to a destructive way, maybe? Maybe you've got a better way of describing exactly what homeopathy does, because that's always when people say, well, how will I feel after the remedy, or what will happen? It's so hard to describe because it's so unique for everyone. But I do try to give people a little bit of a taster. So when they feel that, they know, oh, okay, that's the remedy that's doing this. Sorry, that's a tricky question, but how would you describe to somebody how a remedy can possibly make you feel when it comes to grief or trauma?
Oh, wow. I think it's impossible to say.
It is.
It's unique for everyone. It's very individual. But I'll give you an example. And I was going to say this before you started asking the questions. I think we're in tune.
Good.
So when my mum died, it was such a blow. In fact, the day after she had passed away, I lost my voice. Wow. And not that I lost it, but I developed this stutter. And I never had a stutter in my life, but I was choking on my words. I couldn't get them out. And I took Ignatia. I self-prescribed because I knew that, I was in the acute state. And I went to sleep, and the next day I woke up and I was fine. So that was the physical triggered by the emotional that was corrected by the homeopathy. In terms of that deep-rooted stuff. So for me, I was practically in bed for a year, and I think it was connected to losing the birth mother, losing the adopted mother, triggered losing the birth mother, and it was huge for me. I was so hopeless. I thought I couldn't make it through. So I don't know if. I couldn't say that there was one remedy, because I've had loads of remedies around it. I've had Aurum and Natmure, loads of carcinosin, all of that.
Hopefully some lac maternum too.
Lac maternum, absolutely. And what's interesting is that years ago, my homeopath said to me, you'll need lac maternum at some point in your life, but not right now. This was 10 years. And I finally came through all those layers. We talk about the layers of the onion, and I've peeled away all those layers and taking that maternum currently.
Oh, it's such a beautiful remedy. Yeah. It's actually one, just for our listeners, lac maternum is the remedy that's made from the breast milk of 9 different mothers. And we've got lac humanum as well, which is just made from the breast milk of 1 mother. But it's just such a powerful remedy. I feel like you can give it to anyone and they would probably do well. Like it's, that mothering and nurturing and, finding yourself. It's an amazing remedy.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think we all need it. We all sort of have some thing about detaching from our mother.
Absolutely.
Being thrown into the world.
Yeah. Actually, there was something else we were going to talk about.
Well, I was going to say that I really love homeopathy. I've traveled quite a lot in my life, and I would always, wherever I would go, I would look out for homeopathic remedies and buy Arnica. Just to say I've had Arnica from every country I've traveled to. But what's really fascinating about it is that actually it's just the same. It's not like it's in Italian or it's in, I don't know, Portuguese or it's in some other crazy language. It's just Arnica in Latin, and which makes it universal, which makes it so beautiful.
That's true. I never thought about it that way. So even if you went to, in any other country in the world, doesn't matter what language they speak, the name is going to be the same because it's all Latin. Yeah. That's kind of handy. We thought that one out quite well, didn't we? 200 odd years ago.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Exactly.
Well, that's one of the things I do love about homeopathy is actually so much has remained unchanged in 200 plus years. I think Hahnemann just got it right the first time. Like, so, a lot has changed, like our methodologies and things like that, but the basis of homeopathy and what it is and how it works has remained unchanged for 200 plus years, which, it doesn't really say much if you look at Eastern medicine, Ayurvedic and yoga and all that sort of stuff. They've been doing it for thousands of years and it's probably, they remain mostly unchanged. So, but we've got 200 years. That counts for something, right?
It absolutely does.
Excellent. So I wonder, Mel, can you tell our listeners what is the message that you want them to get out of today's chat?
So my message is one of hope. I think through my own suffering, and being open to change, open to healing, I've developed a compassion. I think that's the thing. I've developed compassion, and I want to share that message that healing is possible. We all have this innate ability to heal and change. That, in fact, that's what our body wants to do. You know, if we cut our finger, we don't have to do much. If it's a small cut, we don't have to do anything. Maybe put a plaster over it and it will heal. If we cut our finger deeper, we may need a different type of aid. We might need a stitch, but the body will still heal. I think listening to our body, observing our body, and knowing that it wants to heal, no matter what the disease is, whether it's a cut of the finger or some sort of a tumor or some sort of dysfunction of a bodily system or an organ, our body wants to find homeostasis. So listening to that, acknowledging that, honoring that, and giving the body the messages, the correct messages, in order for it to go down that path of healing is all we really need to do. You know, homeopathy for me is so wonderful because it's so simplistic, and it's an information system. And once you understand that and you give the right information that the body is asking for, phenomenal things can happen.
I agree. And I wonder if you want to speak just a little bit about a new path that you're potentially thinking of incorporating into your practice as well.
Yeah, so of late, I've been thinking of becoming a death doula. Now, when I tell people this, they're like, why are you so fascinated by death? And it's not that I'm fascinated by death, it's that I acknowledge that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and we are not here in this one moment, and that's the end of it. If we are truly energetic beings, energy cannot be destroyed nor created. So I am of the belief that we've come through as this soul and into this body, and we'll pass through on the other side. And so in the same way that we acknowledge birth doulas, you know, people you know about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are a doula yourself, aren't you?
Oh, no, I used to teach hypnobirthing. So, yeah, I am passionate about pregnancy, birth, helping mums along that. I would love to be a doula along with, you know, many other things, but homeopathy is all consuming. So, but doulas are amazing. They're so amazing. And this idea of a death doula is incredible. I keep hearing about it more lately, and there's a couple of mums here in Perth that are training to do that as well. And actually, one of the ladies we spoke about, I think it was Rachel Welsh or somebody on the podcast I spoke about recently, that it hasn't been released just yet, but she is busy studying that at the moment as well. And I think it's absolutely wonderful. And of course, you can use homeopathy so beautifully with that. That's something that we've mentioned in the podcast once or twice, is that homeopathy can really help you with that transitional.
Absolutely. So in the same way that you welcome someone into this life in the flesh, you can also assist them to transition and move on. In fact, I think it was 2 weeks ago, a client of mine reached out, and she said that her grandmother was in the hospital and it wasn't looking good. And she was pretty traumatized by it. You know, she was pretty affected by everything that was going on. And she just reached out to me through text, but I rang her up because I wanted to hear more. And so I got a better idea of what was going on. And I said that I would come and see her grandmother without knowing too much. I wanted to see her just to establish what was happening. But intuitively, somehow, I knew to take arsenicum 10N, which I did, because I really wasn't sure that she was in such a bad state. I didn't think she was transitioning in that day. Anyway, I left it with my client and I said, well, you know, you can use this if you want to. And she said, well, I won't tell the rest of my family. Anyway, she held on to it. Anyway, later that night, she said, well, how do I give it? How many should I give? And the next day, her grandmother passed.
Wow.
And she had given the arsenicum 10N, and she told me that it changed her it calmed her breathing because her breathing was very shallow. So she was able to calm her breathing calmed, and she was then out of her suffering. So it was pretty amazing.
That is amazing. I'm listening to this, as you're speaking, and I'm thinking I can just imagine having the skeptics having a field day with this, but with us that know how homeopathy works, and we know what arsenicum does for a client who is anxious, at any stage in their life, anywhere from birth through to death. And arsenicum is such an incredible homeopathic remedy for anxiety and that fear, and using it at end stage of life. There's so many homeopaths that have amazing stories of how arsenicum has helped somebody at end stage of life just actually be able to release and let go and be okay with that transition. So I think it's beautiful. I do hope you take this further, because I think you'll be amazing for it.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. I've been looking online for courses and things. So I that's my next step.
Well, I'll go find out who it was that spoke on the podcast about it and send you the details of the course that she did, because there was definitely
that would be awesome. Yes, thank you.
Well, Mel, it was so beautiful to connect with you, and I am going to have the Beach Boys song stuck in my head for the rest of the day. And I hope it's so. I actually have this funny story. I was about 12 years old. I remember it so vividly, sitting on my mum's bed, and Beach Boys song came on the TV, and my mum's like, "Oh, who sings that?" And I was so shocked that my mother did not know who the Beach Boys was. So I think that's also with that song. I just remember that so clear. How do you not know who the Beach Boys are? And I'm giving away my age here, but anyway, that's okay too. I'll never forget that.
Yeah. This little island in the middle of the Atlantic is quite a special place, I have to say. And I often think that there's some great remedies to be proved here.
Ooh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I think you may have to arrange a proving. As I'm sure a few homeopaths will look for an excuse to come over there to make some more remedies. You probably have some amazing things there that you could turn into remedies, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Plants and animals and all sorts.
Cedar and lizards and
wow.
Yeah, cacao. The national thing of the Bermudiana flower is our national flower, and it's so cute. And it has such a history. Yeah, it has such a history with a woman who was deemed to be a witch, and she was burned. She was actually burned alive for poisoning her slave master. And these flowers are thought to grow in her, and the energy of her through these flowers. So there are lots of mythical and folklore things that.
And has that not been turned into a remedy yet?
Not yet. I've got so much on my plate, Eugenia. There's so much I can do. But
that sounds
it's in the works.
Amazing. I can, just from you saying that, I can imagine it would be a great remedy for healers. Just that all that persecution and oh my gosh.
Exactly.
You're gonna have to do that. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm booking flights to Bermuda. Well,
awesome.
it was lovely to chat with you.
We'll be happy to have you.
Thank you so much for your time and for sharing this with our listeners. And I really hope they reach out to you and that, they would consider using homeopathy and yoga in this grief process and know that homeopathy will give them, can give them some hope and that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much, Eugenie.
Chat with you soon. Bye.
And thank you to your listeners.
The Homeopathy Hangout podcast is produced by Eugenie Kruger Homeopathy. For more information, visit eugeniekruger.com. The information presented in this podcast is for educational purposes only and does not replace advice from your medical practitioner. Please read our full disclaimer in the show notes. Thank you for listening.